Welcome back for another Full Build Friday, where I build a character from your favorite games, shows, and comics in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. This time around, I have neither a request nor a rebuild, but an idea I had after coming across some feats during a campaign. I'm pretty eager about this one, so we're just going to get right into this desert duelist, Sivir, the Battle Mistress.
Step light, strike hard.
Before we begin, we're now on Patreon. You can get builds and monsters 3 weeks early there, as well as unique items and extra content. Even a little bit helps us go a long way. Naturally, before we can do so, we do have to plot out some build goals. Born in the desert region of Shurima, Sivir lost her parents at a young age and took to looting ruins to survive. Her life of crime eventually led her to a mercenary crew that she took over after ousting the previous leader. Within the game of League, she is a ranged marksman who excels at multi-target damage and swift movement, while she fights with a thrown crossblade called the Chalakar. Whenever she damages an enemy champion, her Fleet of Foot passive triggers to grant her increased movement speed for a short duration. She can hurl her weapon in a straight line with Boomerang Blade, which then returns to her after a short delay, dealing damage along each path. Activating her Ricochet grants her bonus attack speed, and more notably empowers her attacks to cause her crossblade to bounce between multiple enemies. For a more defensive option, she has the aptly named Spell Shield, which can be activated to block the next ability from affecting her. If it manages to do so, she both regains health and triggers her Fleet of Foot passive. Finally, her ultimate is On the Hunt, which prompts her to release a battle cry that enhances the movement speed of herself and her allies. While this is active, scoring additional takedowns extends its duration. Altogether now, Sivir is a ranged combatant who wields a thrown-bladed weapon, which she demonstrates enough mastery over to bounce it between enemies or even throw it like a boomerang. Between her ult and passive, she is pretty quick, and she also has a spell shield to guard against the magic of those that seek her harm, which does feel a little incongruous with the rest of her kit. Despite that, I am going to be a teensy bit bold and make a claim. By the time I am done describing Sivir's first level, we will have covered 4 out of her 5 abilities. Now, to accomplish that, we're going to get a little weird, and start with an Orc ancestry. I think either the Badlands or Grave Heritage could suit her, with the former better suiting her movement sub-theme and her desert home, while the latter may better match her tomb raiding. For some firmer feeding, I'd go ahead and grab Orc Superstition. This reaction provides Sivir with a bonus on saves against magical effects, which slightly resembles her spell shield. While merely just a boost, the full-on negation of magic effects is always going to be hard to find in Pathfinder. Rounding out her ancestry then is a pair of ability boosts to her dexterity and constitution, taking advantage of the 2 free boosts that the remastered orcs receive. Even if you didn't take the Grave Heritage from our Orc ancestry, you could still represent Sivir's early life as a Tomb Raider with the Grave Robber background. Although Sivir doesn't display this in her kit, it feels fitting that she become trained in stealth and underworld lore. She further receives the Experienced Smuggler skill feat, likely helping her hide her loot after she's come out of a tomb. Rounding out her background are ability boosts that she can once again spend on her dexterity and constitution. That brings us to Sivir's class, and much like her ancestry, it's gonna get a little weird. I got called out on using odd classes for a lot of characters recently, but it is sometimes a case where they honestly just fit better. Case in point, we can honestly get the bulk of what we need for Sivir with the first level of the Kineticist. Using a constitution-based class for such a dexterous character does feel a little off, but I promise that it is all going to work out. Now, the Kineticist has a lot going on, but the big decision to start with is saying that she's going to be a single-gate Kineticist of the air element, making her an Aerokineticist. This provides her with long-range elemental blasts that deal electricity or slashing damage, the latter of which will be important when it comes to representing her crossblade. She further gains the Air Impulse Junction, and can use that to work in some extra movement whenever she uses her impulses, per her passive. Further shaping her elemental blast into her famous crossblade is the Weapon Infusion class feat. Through this, she can either increase the range of her crossblade, or shorten it to add her strength through the thrown element. Along with a class feat, she gets 2 air impulses, and obviously has to spend the first one on her aerial boomerang. This was one of the deciding factors behind using the Kineticist class, letting her launch a slicing and dicing line that she can then call back to her, possibly after adjusting her positioning. Sivir can also gain the 4 Winds Impulse, which allows her to grant movement to each of her allies without them using a single action or even reaction of their own. Obviously, this can resemble her On the Hunt ultimate, which means that we've at least touched upon her passive, her Boomerang Blade, Spell Shield, and her ult, even if I do have intentions of diving a bit deeper into some of these ideas. Given what we have thus far though, we'll round out first level with ability boost to Sivir's Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, and Wisdom. While she won't attack with it, keeping up her Dexterity will help her AC, and Strength could be useful if she wants to throw her Elemental Blasts. From there, Kineticists don't get many skills. While they do receive training in Nature, she's only got enough skill increases left for Acrobatics, Athletics, and Thievery. We don't really have to worry about equipment too much, since she can just create her Elemental Blast, but you will have to equip her with studded leather armor, at least to start out. Now, not to be too predictable, but I do find myself drawn to a dedication with Sivir's 2nd level, specifically the Acrobat dedication. Selecting this serves to supply us with some free skill increases for her acrobatic skill, since she is rather nimble. I also just don't think the Kineticist options available right now really fit her any better. I do have her taking Subtle Theft as her skill feat, and this is one of those things where you either have to lean into the lore, or simply extrapolate from the basics of the character. Sivir seems to have a slightly skewed view of property ownership that does make this feel like a fine fit. Further fitting her, she gains Extract Element and will Expertise at 3rd level, but I'm not sure she'll be making much use of the first of those, as her slashing damage is a fairly safe option. Her Archetype will then make her an expert in Acrobatics, while she'll spend her actual skill increase on Thievery to become an expert of that as well. Given her need for speed, Fleet is an obvious pick here as her general feat, enhancing her speed to resemble the speed boost found throughout her kit. For the 4th level, this fearsome flinger of a full-size Fletchet, we find Kinetic Activation, which I want to take a second to explain. As you may have noticed, we've already got a lot of what we need for Sivir. Options at this point are almost all going to take her beyond what we know of her. So, I would mainly suggest taking options that either interest you, or aid you in general operations. Now that being said, I do like Wary Disarmament as a way for her to deal with the dangers when delving the depths of dungeons, and also taking advantage of her Thievery skill. With that all established, the 5th level, this mobile mercenary maiden manages ability boost to her Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, and Wisdom. She further gains a skill increase that she'll actually be using to become trained in Survival, since the desert is after all a rather harsh place. Furthermore, Kineticists gain a Gates threshold here, and we will absolutely be sticking to the air element by expanding the portal. This allows her to gain the Air Aura Junction to further demonstrate her ult with a speed up for herself and her team. She can also gain the Air Shroud Impulse, granting her a stance that makes it harder for enemies to fire at her and her nearby friends, which takes a little inspiration from her Spell Shield. Along with all that, she can gain the Spell Survivor Ancestry feat, meaning that when her Orc Superstition allows her to avoid effect, she gains resistance to damage dealt up by the creator of that effect until the end of their next turn. It's just a nice little boon. Featuring some further defensive options, the Acrobat gives us access to Dodge Away at 6th level, a reaction that also features a step to help her kite out of the way from her foes. With her focus on acrobatics, she can use Tumbling Teamwork to further aid her teammates maneuver around enemies, once again borrowing some inspiration from her On the Hunt ultimate. For lucky level 7, we'll lead with Kinetic Durability, Kinetic Expertise, and a skill increase that makes her master in Acrobatics and Thievery alike. When it comes to her general feat, I like Incredible Initiative as just another way to fit in with her speed. It's less obvious than an increase to her movement speed, but more about helping her act first when a fight breaks out. We continue to stick with something thematic at level 8 as Sivir uses Elemental Overlap to take Desert Wind. This is another impulse stance, and one that I think beats out Air Shroud, as it makes her concealed and enhances her damage just a bit. Also, it's desert stuff, just suits her. She further gains Tumbling Theft to make the tumble through action even more useful to her, and letting her snatch valuables as she does so. With her 9th level, she gains Perception Expertise, becomes an expert in Survival, and then also gets another Gates threshold. Again, she's going to expand the portal, and since marksmen are somewhat crit based, I went for the critical blast, and further gain flinging updraft as yet another way to increase the movement of her allies. Rounding out the level is pervasive superstition, which will turn her orc superstition reaction into just a full-time effect. That actually makes it a bit less like her spell shield, but it is honestly just a really good boon. Following on with level 10, this slick soldier of the sands and sun seeks ability boost to her strength, dexterity, constitution, and wisdom. We further gain a very important class feat with Chain Infusion. Functioning akin to a spell shape effect, this modifies her next elemental blast to bounce between enemies, obviously resembling her ricochet, and giving us all of her abilities covered by 10th level. Honestly, I could call it here. Or, I could give you the full build promised and press on with a kip up skill feat. Acrobatics is getting pretty high, and this feat will help her act faster after she's been knocked down, at least by virtue of removing the actions needed to stand up. Even more speed, of a sorts, can be achieved at 11th level with kinetic quickness, along with reflow elements, weapon expertise, and a skill increase to make her an expert in stealth. Feather Step further helps her dance across the dunes, dodging into difficult terrain with a single step. Given the tumbling feats that we've already taken, I'm going to use this opportunity to add Tumbling Opportunist to Sivir's arsenal at 12th level. I would refrain from using Tumbling Strikes since her elemental blasts aren't actually strikes, but tripping enemies while using acrobatics is still pretty solid for her. Nimble Crawl though is not as solid, especially since she already has Kip Up, but it might be useful for slipping under traps and the like when she's taking a traipse through the tombs. On that topic, Unlucky level 13 features light armor expertise, weapon specialization, and a skill increase to make her a master in stealth. She will once again expand the portal to gain elemental resistance and cyclonic ascent, simply to provide her with an alternate means of movement. Of greater note is this level's Spell Devourer, which was the feat that originally attracted me to the orc ancestry. Building out of her orc superstition, this makes it so that when she simply succeeds a save against a magic effect, not even critically succeeding, she's provided with a small pool of temp HP. It isn't actually healing her like her spell shield does when it blocks an effect, but I do think it is pretty on point. We do then deviate from that point a little bit with Command Elemental at level 14. This is a bit more in the wheelhouse of her avian ancestor Azir, and is pretty much why I took this at all. Swift Sneak does feel pretty good on her though. Not so much the stealthing part as it is the moving at full speed part, since she does have all that movement in her kit. After that, our Prickly Princess of Parched Places packs ability boosts into her strength, dexterity, constitution, and intelligence. She further gains greater kinetic durability, kinetic mastery, and then skill increases that make her a legend in acrobatics, thievery, and trained in deception. While we have largely covered her kit, we can still use Pick Up the Pace as her general feat to hurry her homies outside of combat, which is, once again, inspired by her ultimate. To maybe possibly further help Sivir's action economy at her sweet 16th, you could consider Imperious Aura, so that she can swap between or just activate her stance impulses as a free action. Though, I think in most cases, you'll probably be using the Desert Winds. Maybe Airshot is better when she's around her allies, and doesn't want to make enemies concealed to them. As for her skill feat, I'd then take Quick Unlock per her Thievery skill. Again, it's just making her faster at doing stuff, and Thievery also doesn't have a legendary skill feat for some reason, which kind of feels like a major missed opportunity to me. As for level 17, Sivir gains double reflow and expands the portal to finally gain a skill junction. This makes her trained in society, since she already has stealth, and gives her the counter element impulse, which is a little based on her spell shield. She also becomes a legend in stealth, and honestly gets an ancestry feat of your choice. I landed on Scar Thick Skin given her life as a mercenary, but I could totally understand going for some of the other options available instead. I further flip-flopped back and forth a little bit before landing on Ghost in the Storm as her 18th level class feat. It gives her another stance, and one that she can use to guard and empower her allies, which actually manages to fit her Legends of Runeterra card just a bit. She does get to take advantage of a legendary sneak thanks to being a legend in stealth, though this is outside of her usual range of abilities. She doesn't actually have any stealth or invisibility effects in the league as a baseline. Through her 19th level, Sivir passes through the final gate, becomes a kinetic legend, a master of light armor, and a master in survival. The Caravan Leader General feat serves as a follow-up to her pick of the pace, and lets her accelerate her allies along their adventures. Finally, to finish out this fully fatal fighter of fortune, she'll find ability boost to her constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. That does make her trained in intimidation, and then she grabs Kinetic Pinnacle. What makes this notable is it gives her one final way of representing her kit. An aspect of Ricochet that I haven't really covered yet is that it increases her attack speed, and this feat will make her permanently quickened to potentially make an extra elemental blast each turn. Now, keeping pace with that topic of quickness, I do like Quick Spring as her final skill feat. In addition to further enhancing her ability to tumble through, the extra strat it grants her could be great for kiting and representing her supreme speed, which does lead us straight into how to play Sivir. She is a very fast range combatant who, when forced into melee, can either just switch to elemental melee blast, or tumble her way out thanks to her acrobatics. Once she has enemies lined up, she'll want her aerial boomerang, whereas Chain Infusion will let her bounce her blast between grouped up enemies that aren't quite in order. I think Desert Wind is her better stance impulse while she's on her own, while Ghost in the Storm works better when she's grouped with her team. And when she is, she can get them into the fight with her 4 winds and Air Aura Junction. Unfortunately, when we get to our free archetype section, things get a little bit rough, because the Kineticist does not play well with most archetypes. I think you could take a look at a Marshal or Commander archetype, though they would require some shifting around of skills and abilities. Nevertheless, she is a leader of mercenaries, and the commands that she gives are something her allies at least can take advantage of. There is also the Bounty Hunter, just because I think it's the closest thing to being a mercenary that is an archetype, or Scout, to get her and her team into the fight faster. I'd say the sand's running out on her build here, but before it does, have we managed to make this mercenary maven, or are her prices just too high for us to reach? Let's review and find out. Sivir the Battle Mistress is a Badlands Orc Aerokineticist, who spent time as a grave robber after the loss of her parents. In time, she became a mercenary worthy of her epithet, though we'll be representing her famous crossblade with Air Elemental Blast and the slashing damage that they can inflict. By having her be a dedicated Aerokineticist, she starts off with an Impulse Junction that grants her some extra movement whenever she uses an Impulse, which works wonders for her fleet of foot. Furthermore, this class allows Sivir to take the Aerial Boomerang Impulse to, of course, replicate her Boomerang Blade in form and function. When it comes to her Ricochet, she can use Chain Infusion to bounce an Elemental Blast between baddies, which covers the primary aspect of it, while Kinetic Pinnacle makes her permanently quicken, to further resemble the enhanced attack speed that it also provides. She reaches into her ancestry for Spell Shield by using Orc Superstition to gain a bonus against magical effects, and then Spell Devourer, letting her heal off of them. Finally, for her on the hunt, we have the incredible speed that we've built into her, and then the ability to enhance that of her teammates with both the Air Elemental's Aura Junction and its 4 Winds Impulse. Daring to dance through dunes and danger, this devious desert dame deals out a dearth of damage to definite divisions, deliberately deleting detractors in deadly duels. That all said, I do want to give a quick mention. We have hit 900 subscribers. I'd really love to hit 1,000, and if we can do so before the end of the year, I'd like to put a little something together for the folks here. In the meantime, let me know what you think of the build, and what other ones I should do. If you dig what I've done here, let me know with a like and a subscribe. I do want to give a big thanks to the folks on the Patreon, with a special shout out to the Orc Overlords. That being Decaffeinate, Robert Miller, Shai Benster, Vorthis, and Black Ouroboros. You too could head on over there for early access to the vids and extra content. Either way, thanks for watching and have a fantastic Friday.